Trustee Muncy.
Thanks, President Winnicke. If I recall correctly, we had asked staff to kind of poll the trustees and see where everybody was at and try to come up with a staff recommendation for a number. So I'd like to hear what the results were of that, please.
I didn't really get to everybody, but I think the general consensus I would put forward would be 20. You know, because it's 0 now, and start with 20 and see where we're at after 1 year. We're going to have to do this multiple years, I'm afraid.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Trustee McKelvey?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. So I assume we're talking about the SMRF program? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
as you called it, the Smurf.
So if we go from 10 to 20, then no more than 5,000 on one project? Is that all the guidelines within that program remain the same? Just the dollar amount is different?
I think there was discussion of 5,000 as a max or no greater than 50% of the fund in any given project. I don't know which one you want to go down that one either.
Mr. Muncy?
Go ahead, Trustee Muncy.
Again, it was just a proposal, what was put in the presentation last time. It was $5,000 max per project, 50% of the project value, not of the fund value.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what it was very clear, it's 50% of the.
Okay. Trustee Boatner.
So we're looking for a consensus to have this as a line item in the budget.
In the capital.
Yeah, so we need to agree on.
capital number, 20 or 25.
Okay. So I think the 20,000 sounds reasonable, but the discussion on the program and the max 5, I think that's, you know, a whole discussion in itself. But for a budget item, $20,000, I mean, that'll roll over year after year.
Yeah, we don't have to discuss
Right.
the
We just need a,
project here at the budget hearing. No.
sure.
Okay. Trustee Burson.
As I mentioned at the last meeting, my only concern about the program is I'm hesitant to fund the actual work that is being done on private property, even through a grant program like this. Not because it isn't worthy, but because I think that in most of the situations where this occurs, there are going to be significant questions about what the right solution is, and there are engineering questions, there may be legal questions, and for me, this money is better spent helping people make sure that they're on the right path than it is for paying for their progress on that path. Other than that, I mean, I think the idea of the village getting involved and helping where we can help makes sense. I just think that we will get more leverage if our help is limited more to the planning, the engineering, strategy, and the legal questions around the stormwater issue.
We can certainly just put 20 in the capital stormwater Smurf program and decide the parameters at an upcoming following meeting.
Definitely. Trustee Morgan, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Just set the budget, and when we build the ordinance on how it's going to be able to operate, then we'll deal with how the funds are going to be used and everything that goes along with it.
Good.
I think 20,000 is great.
Okay. Do we have the consensus to move forward with that?
Yep.
Yes? Good. Good. It's not a formal vote, just a consensus. All right. Moving along, Mike Terrell, you wanted to make public comment, I believe?
Yeah, certainly some questions regarding the budget.
Did you have anyone else from staff
I don't
Sounds
think
live.
so.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'll go rather quickly to save some time. Starting on page 1, it says miscellaneous revenues. Jump from 45.8 to 154,000 plus is a huge jump just to be labeled miscellaneous. Is there any detailed on such a significant line item? I noticed under page 2, Comcast franchise fees. There was last year, but there are none this year. Has the arrangement with Comcast changed that the 20,000 is not available? Driveway, page 3, driveway access fees, 10-4483. It's been defined several times. Norton Lake is a big driver, and that Norton Lake will be wrapping up, so I would expect those fees to decline as opposed to nearly a doubling in growth. Interest, I've been to a number of the Finance Committee meetings, the board meetings, et cetera. We're on miscellaneous revenue 10-4910. Based on the numbers that have been batted around by many on the Finance Committee meeting, that number should probably be closer to 200,000, possibly more, instead of 144, based on their suggestions and recommendations on current interest rates. Good job on health and dental on page 4. Large jump, much debated, page 5, line item 10-21-4230, salaries overtime. Historically, 10,000 jumped to 128,000, and the commentary that's been going back and forth has been that should be declining as it's anticipated 3 existing full-time police office positions will be filled. Well, if you fill those, you don't need the overtime. You don't need the overtime and the 3 times. It's either or. As you get the full-timers, the overtime should disappear. And that's been debated at Finance on a number of occasions. Item page 7, item 10-31-5350, inspection services jumped to 136,000 plus. I believe all of those are reimbursable. Those aren't true expenses. That's reimbursable from the residents who pay their various fees. Is that not correct? Road and Bridge, at the bottom of the page, transfers out. You see a $250,000 figure. Last year it was $650,000. Road and Bridge arguably should be somewhere around $550,000. That's the revenues historically that we've gotten. MFT expenditures, $544,197. We just updated that to,
Go
is there
ahead.
something going on?
It's our timer.
Aha, okay. And that's it. Those are just all observances for your consideration. If you wish to comment, it'd be appreciated.
Okay.
Those are a lot of comments there I have to address. I'll try and address the ones I can recall.
First, Tim. Is there, because we've discussed some of the things that were brought up by the general public, do you want to answer every one of them, or do you want to just the ones that touched any member of the board for justification? Or do you want to do all of them? What's the will of the board?
We usually do all. Yeah,
Okay.
we usually do all.
I mean, I have some questions. I didn't realize there were no citizens next, but that's fine. I have questions on the police, just to my understand. I missed the meeting, so I apologize for that.
Okay, so I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tim.
So on miscellaneous revenues, you did bring up a good point that there's a big variance from this budget to the previous budgets. And that is because of interest revenue. The previous budget was just a total miss on interest revenue. They totally missed the calculation of how much revenue we were going to get this year. And I think the Finance Committee did agree we would get substantially more revenue. It's not a difficult calculation. It's how much money we have in the bank times the assumed rate of interest, which seems like it's going to remain pretty high. So that $154,000, I think, is spot on. It's just it was budgeted poorly previous years. There was another comment that was made about how we did budget properly for interest, which kind of coincides with the very first comment he made. So the comments wash each other out. So I'm not going to address that other comment. In terms of if we budgeted properly on interest. I think the interest that we budgeted in this fiscal year is conservative, but not too conservative. It is much better than what was budgeted in fiscal year '24. Regarding the
And
inspect,
so the public knows and the board, we did use the finance committee's
recommendation, correct.
recommendation for the, not 5%, but less than 5, because they were trying to be conservative on revenue and, you know, not give us a false
Right.
hope that it was going to be higher than it could be, because they're talking about rate cuts every 2 weeks nationally in Washington. Whether that happens remains to be seen.
So just to be clear, on miscellaneous revenue on the first page, the concern was $154,000 budgeted compared to $45,000 last year. Why the big jump? And the reason for the big variance is it wasn't well budgeted for last year. Interest rates jumped, I don't know, I think it was probably about 14 months ago. I think we could have anticipated that we would have had additional revenues this fiscal year, but they just weren't budgeted. So the Administrator Rooney is correct that the Finance Committee did feel comfortable with that $154,000, which was the initial question. On to the inspection services, the commentator was correct. Those are pass-throughs. So regardless of it's 136 or 75,000, we should be getting those back. I can't remember what other comment he had on there. One moment.
I think we could, while you're searching, and maybe do a sidebar with the Mike.
Sure.
Chief, if you'd explain salaries and overtime one more time, just because we didn't have James sworn in. Can we have him speak to salaries and staffing?
If I could, just to be clear,
Yeah.
it's difficult on this budget
Yeah,
to compare apples to apples
Right.
because, you know, there's 3 people that have touched the payroll process this fiscal year. And I think a lot of overtime hours were recorded in salary hours, regular salaries. Now, I mean, that doesn't violate any laws or any regulations, but it's not good budgeting, so we're going to have to reclassify some actual numbers. So that is where I think a lot of the variance comes. We didn't overpay anyone, we didn't underpay anyone, it's just I think we recorded it incorrectly. So it's hard to make that comparison because you're not making apples to apples comparisons.
Yeah, can I just ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Trustee
Yeah,
McKelvey.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand it. So because I remember I attended 2 meetings ago, I have that documented. And I remember Trustee Burson had asked a question regarding it, and so did I, regarding the overtime and the heads and or the salaries. So I'm just trying to understand it. At that meeting, my understanding was the budget was $772,924, and I wrote down the number 3 heads. We added 3 heads into that number.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
We did.
The meeting I missed, we moved $60,000 out of that number.
Out of the part-timer, or out of the
No. Okay, so how we built up that $772,000, and I don't have my notes in front of me, but I think I can give you a
Okay.
general explanation. We determined the total number of hours we're gonna need for 3 shifts of 8 hours, two police personnel on each day. We multiply those hours, and then we backed out the amount of training hours, we added training hours, and then we added a premium for a few days that we think we might need more shifts than normal. And we came up with a total number of hours that the village would need to cover. Then we applied that either the full-time or part-time people. We took an average rate for full-time hourly people, and we gave the amount of time they'd be available for regular hours, which is about 2,050 hours. Then we backed out their vacation time they were eligible for. Anything that was left over would have required either overtime or part-time employees. We gave half of those remaining hours that weren't covered by the full-time employees, half of them to part-time employees, and half to full-time employees, which would have been overtime. Did that make sense?
You need a slide rule. to
I have
understand.
a schedule, and I believe it
Well,
was sent to you.
the only way, simple math, though, I'm sincerely going back to that meeting when Trustee Burson and myself asked the question. There was 772,000.
Right.
Now I look at that number, it's 710,000, right?
Correct.
And you took 62,000, and you put it
In
over-
training.
In training.
Correct.
Okay. but we still have this pot of gold called 128,000 in overtime.
Right,
But when you look at the year-to-date overtime, we're not even close to that.
okay.
We even end up the most, we end up half of that. So to me, back in my old days, I would say we're building a sandcastle. We got a little fat there,
Correct.
okay?
yeah,
We're a little chubby around this
Right.
salary thing. I just trying to understand it.
Yes.
And your explanation, I don't think covered it. We have
Okay.
we still didn't subtract anything.
I guess I wasn't clear in my previous comment.
Okay.
I can't compare this period to the prior period, because it's not apples to apples, because I had 3 people, including myself as one of them, touching the payroll process this fiscal year. I believe many overtime hours, or I'm sorry, regular salary hours were included in overtime. They were just recorded correctly. So if you look at line items and you're comparing them, they're not going to be correct. Is that good? No, it is not good. Is it a good budgeting practice? It is not. Is it good reporting? It is not. Can we fix it? We can. Did we break any laws? We did not.
And the correction is covering the number of hours we have to cover on shifts, and that's the rubric, we went through it, James, 2 or 3 times to get.
Math doesn't work.
Okay, we have 3 trustees. Trustee Burson, you want to make a comment?
Thank you. If I understand it correctly, and I think I'm mostly satisfied with your explanation, by the way, but to clarify, if I understand it correctly, we're getting to this overtime number in part based on what we estimate is even potentially available out of our full-time staff. Is that correct? So we have X number of full-time officers, and we're saying this is how much more we think they can work and what we think that we're able to get out of them, and we have a rate attached to that.
Correct.
And then the entire rest of the shortfall of hours, outside of what, we've otherwise have officers planned for, right? So this really still comes down to not enough officers, it seems like, right? Because, so the entire rest of the shortfall of hours is getting dumped into what is basically the part-time overtime pool. Is that right?
Correct. We have overtime hours that aren't going to be covered by full-time staff, and those overtime hours are going to be divvied up, in my model that's presented in a budget, in half. Half are going to go to full-time personnel at time and a half, and the other 50% of the overtime hours are going to go to the part-time. I mean, ideally, we'd like to give them all to the part-time people because they're a lower rate, but, I mean, we don't think operationally that is really how it's going to work out. So what we presented to you originally in our budget is that we thought what was good is we're going to hire more full-time people to reduce the overtime. You, as a board, are looking at the documents and saying, well, this doesn't make sense because we're seeing overtime is going up compared to the current fiscal year. And what I'm saying, the frustration for me is that you're not looking at apples to apples because this year, in this fiscal year, I believe many hours that were regular hours were recorded as overtime, particularly for part-time people.
Okay,
So the
trustee.
reporting is not really as clean as it would be to do good analysis.
Okay, trustee Muncy is next.
Thank you, President Winnicke. I guess 2 questions. If we go back historically, maybe we had a recording problem year over year, but we haven't had anywhere close to this overtime, not just last year, but in previous years either. And then the other question is, when you had, I guess that first one wasn't a question, just a statement.
Just a statement, okay.
The second one is a question. You said in your analysis, you were looking at full-time officers at 8 hours a shift. And previously, we've been told that there would be a new model of 12-hour shifts that you were looking at. Is that going to assist with this overtime number where we won't reach that, or is it going to make it even worse?
I would ask the Village Fund Council to swear in the chief to answer that question, please.
Okay, he's been waiting. Chief Levand, go ahead.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, yes, I understand, like, all the questions and that, but this is, so I'm we have a plan, we have a goal. You have to trust that it's going there, but here's the thing, we are putting a budget into place right now that currently, we do not have 3 officers filling those spots. So if we didn't do this way, so we have 3 shifts, 2 officers per shift, it's not accurate. So the Fire Police Commission are currently finishing up on their end with it. I'm 100% confident that over the next 30 days maximum, we will have the 3 officers put into those spots, which will allow us to go to the 12-hour shifts. And I understand the questioning, because I've seen the same thing you guys are looking at. There is going to be significant savings in what you're seeing currently in this budget. I'm 100% confident of that. We just can't, because we are basing off what our staffing levels are currently. So if you ask me the same questions within the next 30 days, it's going to be completely different, because schedules are going to change. You know, we're going to go from 6 to 4 in a 24-hour period. There's going to be significant changes. But for the discussion of this budget, where we're at currently, is we're still basing that off of 3 shifts, 2 cars per shift with what we have right now, because they're not filled currently. And even the overtime thing, Tim is a way smarter man than I am when it comes to numbers. That's why I was hoping he was trying to explain this over here, is I see the high number on that and the questions for it, but I also believe a lot of that is going to, it's not going to be at that number. It's going to be a significant savings on it. It's just getting there to get these 3 full-time officers sworn in to be able to change the staffing levels that we currently have. Because right now, we're just operating off of 3 shifts, 2 cars per shift, and that's where we're at. But there will be a significant difference on it. We're just not there yet.
And that's a proven model to go to 12-hour shifts. And that's why fire departments break theirs in 24 and 12s, because it does significantly reduce. And a few police departments that have done it, every one of them has reduced their overtime hours just based on that new scheduling. And that's why it's generally approved by all management and boards to switch from the 8-hour shift to a 12, because it can reduce your overtime liability.
When there's a lot of sides that go to that too. Obviously, the overtime, the costs go down, the morale goes way up, officers want it. Maintenance on cars go down. Like, I mean, you're drastically cutting the number that is out there. So there's a lot of benefits that go along with it. We just don't have it at this second. Will we have it within the next 30 days? Yes, I'm confident that we will have it in the next 30 days.
Okay, Trustee Millette, you've been waiting.
Thank you, President Wojcicki. A couple things. One, maybe for the benefit of the new board folks, a couple of you know my stance on budgeting. Mike does. And I'm not picking. Don't take this wrong. It's just from my experiences being at that side of the table. I tend to not go down to the widget level on budgeting. That's just who I am. If we look at the bottom end of the police line item, last year's budget was $1,666,560. The request for this year is $1,677,593. So in my mind, if the department head, the chief, can manage to those numbers, we're only talking about an increase of $11,000. To the point of looking at specific to this item, thanks for getting the weirdness that I was confused about from the old budget presentation where, you know, we had the extra thing. But I'm looking at budget to budget to budget comparisons here. I don't have a flyout. I don't have a year-end actual. I'm pretty sure last year in the 24 fiscal year, we did not spend $10,000 in overtime on the police department.
No, you did not.
See, but that's what's in the budget. So if we look at those 2 numbers together, it's like from 10 to 168, that's a huge jump. But that's not the actual number. That's the budget number, which is fine. If we're presenting it this way, that's cool. It's budget to budget budget. We just have to keep that in mind. So again, we're looking at an increase of, I can't even calculate 11,000 on $1,000,006. That's a fraction of a percent increase in what the request is. So I'm comfortable with the overall number. I'm comfortable with what Chief is saying about how he intends to manage to that $1,677,000 and some change number. But it certainly wouldn't be it wouldn't be unusual to have a actual, a 2023 actual, a 2022 actual in something so we can compare those.
Correct. You were distributed the 11-month year-to-date. So that would be almost 92% of the fiscal year would be completed in the 11-month year-to-date, which I did distribute to you. If you look at the police the police line, which is the biggest line in the budget, they are at 92.1%. So they are almost exactly on their budget. So I think that kind of ties into your comment. The largest line item is almost exactly on budget. I don't know how the chief does that every month, but he manages to.
Go ahead, Chief Levan.
And just to piggyback off that, I mean, we all know, like, there's been a lot of changes, like, over the last year here, in personnel, overtime, salaries, with everything that's gone on. That is a budget with everything that has gone on in like the last 11 months or so here, that is almost dead on. So like what we're asking you for a budget now, 100% confident with all that sort of gone behind us and the changes in place. If that is a dead-on budget from last year with everything that took place, what this coming year's budget is gonna look like fully staffed, it will be a positive. It'll be good.
I think Trustee Boatner was next. Did you have a comment? And then Trustee Morgan after.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the math. It was really simple.
Okay.
After all of the hours are calculated that we need, you use the full-time guys. This is what we had left over, and you just split it down the middle
Okay.
with part-time and overtime. So was that model that you used, did you include the 3 additional full-time employees we're gonna hire?
Yes, I did, and I included them, that one would be hired next month. Was it next month? Oh, I'm sorry, 2 months into the fiscal year. The second one would be hired 3 months into the fiscal year, and the third one would be hired 4 months into the fiscal year.
Everything was kind of offset, that
Right,
makes
so
sense.
it's not a full-time equivalent for the entire year.
So my question then with the overtime, was there like any discussion about 4 new full-time employees? Because it sounds like 128,000 at time and a half, probably be really close to 1 additional full-time employee.
Right.
How does that work out? Or is that not needed and really this overtime line is there, but it's not? I mean, is that kind of what we're saying? It exists, but it doesn't?
It will change now because what the chief just said earlier, the Board of Fire and Police Commission has gotten us 3, but it's not taken in until August to do it. We should be able to, on May 7th, at the next board meeting, do the ceremonial swearing in of 3 that are gonna be hired one day after each other in the first week of May by the Board of Fire and Police Commission list of, that the chief spoke of. Then we're gonna switch to the 12-hour shift, which will drastically change the need for overtime. So I guess what we're saying, though, it's what Mike Millette said, that 11,000 extra above this year's target budget number is all we're gonna need in the police department to be level at the end of the day.
So there's no need for a 4th
No,
full-time police
would,
officer?
if we weren't switching to the 12-hour shift, we might give that some consideration, but we're gonna first lock in the 12-hour shift to see that it functions, and we think it will, and then we'll be able to determine that need, especially in the fact that first new people that are hired don't have 4 weeks, 5 weeks of vacation. So their number of off time is not as much to cover. So we've factored that in with the 12-hour shift.
Can I just last follow-up to that? So the 128 that's on there for the overtime, is that just kind of to hedge against if things don't go as planned? Or why do we have it there at all?
The historical anomaly of 3 shifts of 8 hours and 2 on that shift. That's a leftover of the historical trend of overtime. But we're gonna try to address and be more efficient by the 12-hour shift. So it won't be spent is our conjecture.
Chief Levan, go ahead.
And so also, we're fortunate, right now, we're in the process of hiring 3 additional part-timers, which is a big part for us, because that then starts to change the calculations too. That starts to eliminate overtime and everything else, which we've been short on over the last year, not just full-time, part-timers too. So we had one that just recently started, we have a couple more, 30 years experience apiece. So those will be good pieces to put into place, which is gonna help eliminate any overtime, having them to be able to work, which is a plus. But, and I know we're talking about the salaries, and rightfully so, but when you look at that $11,000, that's more that we're asking for. If anything, I would contribute that to our technology fund. Like, that is our biggest, because of the Safety Act, our body cams, our squad cams, everything Axon, like, I can sit here and go on and on. That is our biggest cost this coming year, is going to be in the technology line, just because all these laws, the mandates, the Safety Act keeps changing more and more, and that, and not just us, any police department, that's where they're feeling the biggest pinch on it.
And in this salary, overtime, part-time, we started building this model in February. And a lot has changed with the chief, with the coming forward with the 12-hour shift and the hiring practices of actually successfully getting a list that he can hire from that are qualified, competent people that we're confident to hire. We didn't think it would be that quick. We were very fortunate of the candidate pool and the attraction of other part-timers to replace some folks that are transferring from part-time status to full. We've backfilled those. We did not project in our wildest optimism that we would have 5 quality people available to us on May 1 in February. And that's the model that we started with. So that we are changing it, but not until May 1st. And that's vastly accelerated over the end of the summer. Best hope in February that we started with.
Okay, Trustee Morgan.
Thank you, Madam President. That was one of the things that I was going to bring up, is if you look at this, one of the biggest things in the police budget is the change in technology and everything that they're having to add new. The other thing you'll probably also be saving when it comes to repairs on vehicles, because of the additional squads that were added. It was more than the normal 1 per year. So being at $11,000 over last year's budget, kudos. And for staying within last year's budget, I'd have to say kudos again, because it was a very tough year for the police department.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Trustee Muncy, go ahead.
Thank you, President Winnicki. Just for the purposes of the public meeting, I wanted to say, although I just speak for myself, I'm going to say we, because I'm pretty confident the full board is behind this. To Tim, thank you very much. We asked you a lot of questions. I understand that. But you've done a great job in putting this together, so we appreciate that. And to Chief Levan and all of our officers, I just want to say, we're talking about how much should we increase the police budget here. Yes, we're questioning some line items, but we are fully behind our police force. We have been asking throughout this process, do you have enough money in computers? Do you have enough money in training? Do you have what you need? Because we're asking, questions about overtime, that sort of thing, we just want to make sure it's going in the right spot, but we are confident and fully behind our police force. And we're talking about, making sure that we get enough, the right increase here. That's what we're really talking about.
Thank you, Trustee Muncy. And Trustee Boatner, go ahead.
Thank you. A different area in the general administrative, there were a couple things that just caught my attention that I was curious about. Our regular salaries went from 305 to 204, and I expected that to be a bigger decrease, just with office staffing. And then the village administrator, of course, is in a different line item now under contracts, I believe.
But it's still under the administrative heading for cost.
Right, but it's not under regular salaries. It's not under line 4210, correct? I believe yours is 5391.
Tim, help me out there where we got that.
If we're in
Yours
general-
is under 5391, correct?
Yeah,
That is
so under
correct.
general administrative, page 4, the first line in 24 was 305, it's 204 now for 25. I anticipated that to be even lower.
Right.
being that the administrator's now down in 5391, and I believe we're actually at least one head less in the office as well.
We are. I can't speak to the actual numbers that build up that 305 in the fiscal year 24 budget, but I can find a file that does, and I can, do a variance walkthrough from one to the next number and explain why. I would expect the primary reason is, well, the reason it went down, we both agree that headcount was reduced. I don't believe the original budget for the administrative aide was full-time, and we gave that position a substantial bump to take over for the clerical role, assistant clerical role. Clerk, I'm sorry, not clerical, which the previous role was being filled by somebody else.
Okay, and if one other thing on the same page, our janitorial expenses, from my math, every month add up to $9,600, not 4,504. I think it's a
Can't remember if we split that.
line item 5360.
Yeah.
Is it 4,504? If we're using the same Paradise Cleaners, it's gonna be $9,600.
All right,
So,
make a note of that. Okay. So would it be safe to say that if I added the $20,000 to the capital fund, and the $336,803 to give us a full $816,000 for the miscellaneous road projects, that would be the budget you would want to pass? Because, the reason I ask is because I got to go plug those in, print them, and that'll be part of the addendum of the ordinance.
Could I have a consensus on that? Sounds right? Yes? Consensus? Okay. Agreed? Yep, go ahead.
One slight little thing, when we were gonna get to the road program, I was gonna ask if there's opportunities, because we had, 60 to 70 grand difference there from what we were expecting from the estimate to what the bid was, to if we could see if the contractor was interested in extending to do some more streets. So if that's the case, then I wouldn't want to amend the capital budget number. I'd like to keep it at the 880 or whatever it was.
Okay.
No, what is it before that? The original.
The original.
Yeah.
And that would just necessitate moving a few more dollars from the unencumbered cash reserve that you do have available to put toward capital, and you've done it, instead of 150, you'd go 175 or something out of the cash reserves to bump that up. I guess we could have a discussion on that. It's out of line on the agenda, but I think it is pertinent because we have to decide what number we're going to put in the amended ordinance. Do we have, Mike, can you pull that up? Or Scott, what are those additional roads that we're referring to on the,
In the current program? Well, they're included in the 816,000.
Aberdeen and Clydesdale are included?
Clydesdale and Colonel Bennett are included in
In-
the 816,000.
Well, my point was not them, would be what are the next two streets we would add? That's what I was thinking.
Oh, from the Public Works Subcommittee's next streets in that general area that are rated. You swear him in before he can answer that.
Do you, can we read that again? Do you swear or affirm that the evidence that you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Come on up.
In regards to adding a street to this year's project, that is not something I came prepared on what would be the next logical street to add to it. It would be one or more of the streets from what has been referred to as the ADAP program. Right now, we're only doing 2 of the 7 groups. I would talk with the Highway District and come back with what would be the appropriate grouping of streets to add to utilize those funds. So I can't tell you which one, but I can tell you which pool they'd be coming from.
Therefore, you couldn't tell me if I need 50 grand or 100 grand.
No, because we won't want to do part of a neighborhood
Right.
and not, you know, if there's two streets in one neighborhood, we don't, for efficiency, don't want to do one and not the other.
Check. So I guess we'd have to do a budget amendment on May 7th potentially for that and get that information to the board so you can fully consider it and look at a map and see that the road, you know, the point we've tried to make is not to start a neighborhood and then not finish it, because it disrupts the neighborhood greatly for one street. So we'll get the facts and come back, and if we have to do a budget amendment, we'll just do a budget amendment.
And I could be prepared to provide
Yep.
that information for May 7th.
Trustee Burson, go ahead.
In a similar situation in the past, rather than paving additional roads, we elected to treat the roads that we had already paved. Would that be a reasonable use of that $60,000 if we were to choose to keep it in the budget? And that's actually a question I think maybe I would direct most directly to Trustee Millet.
Yeah, that'd be fine too, I think.
We'll still have to do a budget amendment for any, whether it was 10,000 or 110,000 at the May 7th. But it could be maintenance or it could be an additional street. So we'll try to have Scott and the subcommittee give you recommendations both ways, maintenance versus pavement replacement.
Okay.
All
Can I
right,
just get
Tim,
one more
I think
point of
we-
clarification?
Say it again,
Just
what
to
we're
make
gonna go
certain.
and change.
Miscellaneous road projects and MFT is going to be bumped up from the current amount to $816,000. We're also going to add $20,000 to the capital fund, per the previous discussion, SMRF. Okay, I'll make those changes and have it ready for the ordinance later in the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, no further questions or discussion. I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
Okay, moved by Trustee McKelvey.
I second.
Second by Trustee Morgan. Roll call.
Trustee McElvey? Aye. Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to public comments. Tracy?
Jim Dillon?
Good evening, how are you? First, I just want to say, you guys, you probably don't remember me, but I remember you. I was here about 2 months ago. I live in the Burning Tree subdivision, and we're having a drainage issue there. That's obviously haven't figured out why it's called SMRF. I'm trying to use that acronym in my mind, but I haven't figured out why you've come up with the funny name for it, but that's great. And I appreciate your taking this seriously and understanding how it affects the individual neighborhoods. One of the things I did want to point out with the monies that are being tossed about, or the numbers that are being tossed about, the previous agreement, and when we were unincorporated with Kane County, it was a 50% match on what the cost of the project was. You can look in that. I've already looked at it. I can pull those records for you if you like, but that was also in the 2009 agreement when we became Campton Hills, that we were to take that same role for the village people. The village people and the Smurfs. But the other thing I think that needs to be considered in here is to paint it with just a broad brush and say it's the individual's responsibility. It's just really not, I guess, the best way to look at it, because how big of an area does it affect? How many people does it affect? If, like in my particular area here, this area is, I happen to be the down end of it, and I'm taking in most of the water. And just so you know, just for an idea what kind of water we're talking about here, the last 2 weekends, I rented a 3-inch trash pipe and pumped out over 160,000 gallons of water. All right, and I still have standing water there today. And now it's raining, so it's not going to get better. But I believe there's other things that have to be taken into consideration there is, again, what is the effect on the overall? I mean, how many homes does this actually affect that people don't even realize it? If I were to invest this money in here, which, by the way, we're already in for about $3,500 and we haven't gotten anything done. So, you know, right now, there's 4 or 5 houses that are affected, but there's further down the line that we don't even know. Once we start digging this up, maybe it happens to other people. So at what point, as an individual, not having the authority of a village or of a government position, you know, what's the recourse there? Am I now the guy responsible for taking care of other people's drainages as well? So, while, as much as I appreciate you guys, you know, looking at this and understanding the seriousness of it, I just think it needs to be, it needs to go further into this as to what it would do and how it affects individuals. And like I said, absolutely, right now, I'm the guy that's getting hurt. It's my yard, okay? But it's not my water. It just happens to be visiting me. And then in the case of if someone was, you know, again, without any type of parameters to this, if someone was, I don't know, vindictive or something like that, and they decided they were just going to, you know, well, you're not going to do it, I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to plug it up, you know, who cares what happens, you know? I'm not saying that, don't take it that way, please. But I mean, that's, you know, those are the other issues of recourse that we'd have to look at as well. So, you know, how do we do this? How do we make this right? Like I said, I truly appreciate you guys taking the seriousness of it and understanding it is a program that needs to be there. I just think it needs to go a little bit deeper into, you know, what the effect is for each of the, everything is going to be, each situation is going to be unique, and to paint it with a broad brush and say that it'll apply to all is just inconsistent and probably not fair across the board for, well, for me. Let's just be honest on this one. But no, I just, you know, joking aside, but not understanding that every situation could be vastly different. So it does need to be looked at pretty deep. Again, thank you for your time. Again, I truly appreciate all your help, and you're taking this serious. And oh, and the other thing, it's raining. And when I was here 2 months ago, I had said, you know, this needs to happen as quickly, please. So I'll just say that again. I don't want to spend my weekends pumping water every weekend, so I'd appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving right along, we're on 6, consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to move out the minutes, separate the minutes.
Me also.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to respond to Mr. Dillon? We don't generally do that.
No.
Oh.
No, she wanted to pull the minutes too.
Yeah,
She's
we
avoiding
both wanted to
Jack.
pull the
Oh,
minutes.
okay, well, I think Jim's going there. Got it. All right.
Just want to poll.
Okay, and you want to pull 6A?
Pardon me?
You want to pull 6A?
6A, the minutes.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else to pull from the consent agenda? No. Okay, roll call.
The minutes.
Yeah,
I believe so, and you can direct me if I'm at the right part of the meeting or not. But I would like to pull or ask for a consensus to amend an action item from the previous meeting. Would this be the right time to do that?
Right, so the minutes can be pulled and discussion can be had on that, but if there's a request to amend or rescind a prior vote, it'd have to be on the agenda itself. So there'd have to be notice of it on the agenda. You can discuss consensus, maybe when we're discussing the minutes,
Okay.
as to whether or not that would happen at a prior, or a later meeting.
So I could bring it up as,
You can discuss it, yeah.
very good, thank you.
Move to approve consent agenda consisting of item 6B.
okay.
I'll second it.
Roll call for 6B to move that item.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye. We'll swap.
Okay.
Trustee McKelvey? Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
All right, motion passes, and then we go back to 6A.
Move to
correct?
consider the
Okay.
approval of the April 2nd, 2024 Village Board meeting minutes.
Second, Muncy?
Okay, second by trustee Muncy. Discussion?
Go for it.
No? No?
I'm doing it because I wasn't there.
Uh-huh,
Ah, okay,
So I'm pulling.
okay.
okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, very good, thank you. I wanted the board to consider adding the action item 7A from last week back onto a future agenda to be amended In that, in our conversations last week while discussing Resolution R 2404, Trustee Millet, you provided some really helpful information on where these different roads were on sort of the ranking scale, and which had the highest probabilities to be approved. Danker Road was very low on that list, and we did not last week discuss, and I didn't consider it, I didn't bring it up, I didn't think of it, to amend this to eliminate Danker Road and only do the engineering for Town Hall and Brown Road, which we believe are high on the list and have a very good probability of being approved. I just look at this $68,000 and $68,036 that Danker costs, the engineering, and I kind of feel like, you know, this isn't my money, this is the taxpayers' money, and we're really risking this money where we could easily take that $68,036 and put it into immediate road, the reclamite. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do with this money that are zero risk. I would ask for a consensus to put this back on based on that, so that we can have another discussion on this resolution.
Right, so the, just for clarification, or for more indication, the prior action item was that motion to approve resolution R 2404, authorizing the execution of the agreement for roadway design engineering services with HR Green. That amount was $200,000. So from what I understand, Trustee Boatner is asking is just a general consensus. It would be a motion to amend the action that was taken on that prior motion, but it would have to be added to another, to the next board meeting or another board meeting. So, because there's nothing on today's or tonight's meeting with regard to that action.
Correct.
Trustee Millet, go ahead.
Thanks. Trustee Boatner did present that to me earlier, and I was away from my data here, but I have it up again. So we've got two things going when we consider Danker, excuse me, maybe three things. First, as the rating system goes right now, it is tied. It's a dead heat tie for 35.3 points for Danker Road and for the Dunham Road resurfacing that St. Charles put in for. In the overall scheme of things, it ranks 30, tied for 30 out of a list of 38. So it is near the bottom of that list. On the other hand, this is where there's a bit of a crapshoot on it. The projects that are the lowest project that was approved for funding had 37.7 points. So there's a chunk of them that are just on the cusp. So when asked, I mean, where does it rate? Is it 50-50? No, based on how it falls out, it's not. It's below the 50-50. Maybe it's a 40% possibility. But from the other items it's competing against, you know, it was such a tight window there. I mean, it easily could be a 60% project. Potentially, the other thing that if we want to consider keep going the way we talked about last time is sharpening our pencil, to use that overused colloquialism. If we get our financial estimate more attuned, then we would potentially be in a better shape to beat somebody else out who hasn't done that yet. All of the, I mean, I know exactly what goes in the formula. It's not a mystery. You can go to KCOM's website. You can see exactly how all the projects are ranked. The criteria is there. But at the end of the day, this all is a cost. It's all a way to get a cost benefit situation. So if our benefits are what they are, we lower our costs, our rating will go up. That's just the way it goes. Not the numerical rating, but where it floats in the program by how much money is available. So I'd be happy to have a conversation with everybody if you want to reconsider it. I have no problem reconsidering it, but when I was asked to, you know, go back in, and this is all available on the KCOM website if anybody wants to take a look at it. And then a third or fourth, intangible on all of this is, we just heard on Friday that there's going to be more money filtering down because other councils aren't spending it fast enough. So, we as Kane Kendall, the more projects we have ready to go, we, take money that Lake County or I can't remember which cogs were behind. They didn't say which cogs were behind. Councils of government are behind. So that's another indication why maybe we go with what we said last time. So that's the background to add to the discussion.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Mike, is it, not to directly ask you a question if you don't mind, but as your road is on that list, every year, does it just gradually continue to get higher on the list?
Yes.
So next year, if we're at 33 right now, I mean, we would be surely past that 37 point.
Yeah, ideally, trustee Brown, I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So of that 30, there are 12 that are already on the funding list. So take the 12 off, then ours is sitting at whatever that math is, 19. So yeah, that does, in 2 years, if other projects come in that have better scores, then it all gets jumbled back up at that point. But as far as we are talking for the next 2 years, which is what this program's slotted for, that would be a correct thing. That would be a correct way to interpret it.
Scott, you want to come up to the mic?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss this further. I just want everybody to understand this. If projects that are ranked higher than this do not go forward with the engineering and make themselves project ready, you do have the chance to jump above projects that have even a higher point value than you if another community decides not to advance the engineering for this, because you'd be project ready and they would not. The other thing that I want the board to keep in mind is the current program is funded out through 2028 and 2029. The next call for projects happens in 2 years, at which time you're re-ranked, and now you're eligible for funding in 2030 and 31. Is that correct, Trustee Millette? Okay. If you don't do something to advance your position right now, Denker Road would not be eligible for funding until that next call for project, if you don't do something to advance your timing and position at this time. So just additional information, be glad to provide more information in advance of the next meeting, but just want to make sure that everybody understood. You are competing against other communities, and there are other communities that are advancing their projects and receiving funding. So.
Trustee Muncy?
Thank you, President Winnicke. Although I understand, the need to look at this, holistically, I think we're rehashing the issue. I think we've already discussed this. I believe that we've already had these questions answered. There's no actual new information. It's just looking at it through another critical lens. We have already decided that spending the engineering on Denker as well as the others is not money lost. It's money that we will have to do anyway if we're going to perform the work on that road. And if we're waiting until 2031 or whatever it is, we're going to have to do that road by then anyway. So and as Trustee Millette has put it, there's still a good chance that with the engineering done, this one should be able to, hopefully get up that list. In addition, I would hope that through the economy of scale, having 3 projects with the same engineer, working on at the same time, the engineering would be a little less for this one road than it would be if you did it all by itself. So I think this has been asked and answered. We all answered yes. We all voted aye. I think we stick with what we did and move forward.
Go ahead. Trustee Boatner.
My comment back to that would be, we did, and that's why it's in a proposal to amend it, because we have already voted on it. So, but the one thing I would say with the engineering, we're gonna have to do this anyway. We don't do full depth reclamation. None of our engineering is for full depth reclamation. So, I mean, these documents, I don't really know how much value they actually have. I mean, the bid for our engineering for all of our road work this year was $59,000, and we're spending $67,000 on one road for a full depth reclamation. Either way, even if it had some value for some future engineering plan, we'd be paying more money to have it revised to fit what we're actually going to do. So I think justifying it with, it has some intrinsic value to the village going forward either way, I don't think that's true. But I do think that the village should reconsider it. The big difference between what we talked about last week, the last meeting, and this meeting is we approved all three. At no point did we discuss eliminating the lower probability road, which is also the most expensive road to engineer. So that's the reason why I would ask the board for a consensus to put this on the next agenda for an amendment.
Trustee Burson?
I'd be happy to discuss the issue further at another meeting. I think I think you're bringing up a good point in trying to not be all or nothing about the issue and understand that we can be a little more nuanced about it. The only thing that I would like to make sure we're all clear about, and you mentioned it already, is that this is a full depth reclamation, which we don't typically do on most of our roads. And we, as I understand it, we would like to do it on this road because it's a secondary road. It's not a subdivision road, right? And so we have a limited number of roads in the village where we would really like to do a full depth reclamation if we could. And doing it on our own nickel is just not going to happen. So, when we're talking about a road that's not a subdivision road, it's not a county road, it's not a state road, we've got a small number of them in the village, right? And so I'm happy to talk about it further and reconsider Denker Road, in terms of whether we spend that money this budget year or not. But I do think, in general, this idea of us being able to use the at least partial funding that's available through a source like this for full depth reclamation projects is a powerful tool, because otherwise it's never going to happen. We'll be milling and filling Denker for 20 years, right? If we don't at some point do a full depth reclamation on it. So.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, do I have a consensus? You still want to pull, Nick? To the next, okay. Do I have a consensus to pull it from the agenda and put it on the next agenda?
Well, it would just,
Roll call.
really,
Yeah,
it's
why don't we
for
just go by
discussion.
person or something?
Yeah, it's really just for discussion at this time, and then it would be up to Trustee Boatner if he'd like to ask the chair, along with the board's guidelines, to have it added to the next agenda.
Okay. And? Okay, all right. Motion to add this to the next agenda, this item. No.
I would just poll the members individually.
Individually now, don't do a vote.
Oh,
Ask for a call of hands,
yeah.
a show of hands.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
Trustee Millet?
No,
No?
Just a show of hands.
just show of hands would be better than taking an official roll.
All right, show of hands to pull it from the agenda. Okay. To reconsider.
To have a motion to amend on the next agenda.
Okay, motion to amend on the next agenda. Okay. All right, sorry about that. That's first time we've addressed that, so.
Call a question on my motion?
Yep, still.
Yeah. All right, moving along.
I
we're-
think, was
Call
there a
the
vote
question on my
the-
motion.
Yep, there was a vote on the.
We have to vote on the minutes.
Vote on the minutes.
Okay, motion to approve the motion.
No, there's just a vote on the minutes.
The
There's
vote
been a
on-
motion and a second.
Okay, all right, motion to move the minutes and a vote, I guess. Call the roll call.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson? Trustee McKelvey?
Abstain.
Trustee Morgan?
Nay.
Okay. Motion passes.
What was the vote count?
Well, I think so.
1, 2, 3 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 abstain.
3 ayes? Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
motion passes. All right, moving along to action items. A, motion to approve ordinance O-2406, approving the annual municipal budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Motion, please.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Burson.
I'll second
Do I have a
it.
second? Second by trustee Morgan. Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none? No? No? Okay, roll call.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner? Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Okay, motion passes. We had a request from a trustee to remove 7B. Oh, I'm sorry.
We did, it was
Yeah,
pulled.
that was, yeah, we did. I know. I agree. All right, back to 7B. It was a request from one of the trustees to pull that 7B, and we'll discuss it, we'll move it to our next meeting. So I'll take a motion. Huh? There was a request to remove it from the action items. No, it's the resolution accepting a proposal from HR Green for village engineering services. Okay? Okay. Moving on, action item C, motion to approve resolution R-24-06, a resolution to approve the award contract for fiscal year 2025 MFT roadway program to Geneva Construction in the amount of $816,000, $816,316.71.
So moved.
Moved by trustee
I second.
Millet. Second by trustee Burson, Morgan. Okay. Roll call?
Well, point of clarification?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
On the body of the resolution, in the third whereas, it has the other number that needs to be corrected to the 816 number.
816 even?
Well,
Is that-
whatever the
It's
bin number.
836.
Right.
It should be 816.
I think a 3 should be a 1.
$20,000 then.
Yeah.
You have it?
I think it's just a typo.
Okay. We need to vote on that? As amended. We vote on 7C as amended.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you for catching that, Mike. 7D, motion to approve resolution R-24-07, a resolution for maintenance under the Illinois Highway Code for MFT-funded road project in the amount of $544,000.
So moved.
Moved by trustee
Second.
Millet, second by trustee Munson. I'm sorry, Burson. It's been a long night. Sorry about that. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Action item 7E, motion to approve resolution R-24-08, a resolution accepting a proposal from HR Green Incorporated for village construction engineering services for an amount not to exceed $59,984.
So moved.
Moved by trustee
Second,
Burson.
Muncy.
Second by trustee Muncy. Roll call.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 8, discussion items. A, alternative revenue sources, and I'll give Administrative Rooney the floor.
Yes, these three items that we put before, I've asked, we've talked about it in the previous meetings discussing the budget and how we continually have a shortfall for capital, primarily the road. and to look at the meetings that we had during the budget discussion with the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee did speak to the need to address improving the revenues, but they didn't want to enter into the political fray. So I took it upon myself then to working with the legal counsel to get some estimates on the revenue and creating what it would look like as ordinances. So if you wanted to do the three that would be primarily user fees, one is the telecommunication tax, and you'd have to look really close to see where that fee is on most communities, and that one could be about $120,000 to $160,000 estimate of revenue, new source of revenue that could start in September probably if we pass this in May. And then the video streaming is under the amusement tax. And as was discussed tonight, Comcast and AT&T Uverse has been decreasing steadily in the revenue stream that comes to the village because of people disconnecting from the bundle, as they call it, and moving to the Hulu, the Disney, the ESPN Plus type of services. And that one we think could be at $65,000 to $90,000 depending on gauging the use of this community compared to 2 or 3 others that we've looked at. And then the food and beverage tax, I think everybody that eats at a restaurant of any kind sees it, even on a McDonald's. There's a 1 or 2% local sales tax that does go on your food bill. I think there's a 2 or 3% credit card use at a lot of establishments, so it'd be less than what you normally would be charged for your credit card use to pay your restaurant bill. Those are the 3 items as a non-home rule community that could be enacted by the Board of Trustees and not require a referendum if you were to try to do a liquor package sales tax. That'd be much more cumbersome and harder to do. These are all kind of viewed as user fees, and that's why a non-home rule community can enact them. And
Yeah,
could answer any questions.
Yeah, I just want to add one comment. Trustee Muncy had said, had complimented our police department, which it really is an excellent police department. So some of these funds, if collected, would go to our police department and for our roads, which I think is extremely important. I'm going to do Trustee Burson, then we'll get to you. Trustee Burson, go ahead.
In prior discussions about alternative revenue sources, one of the things that we talked about was a local gas tax, which I think we are allowed to implement as a non-home rule community. Are there obstacles to that?
There is. It is allowed, but it's allowed by counties with population that defines Cook County to let the cities in Cook County that are not Chicago do what Chicago does and put a 1 or 2 cent per gallon tax. I thought it was able to be done because I've worked with a community in Wheeling, Illinois that did it, but
They were in Cook County.
they're predominantly in Cook, and any gas station in Lake, I did double check, wasn't allowed to do that.
It's an unfortunate
Thank you.
legislative construct that is only limited to local municipalities and/or counties, or local municipalities within counties that have a population, I believe it's over 3 or 4 million. So Kane does not apply.
So
And
we
a-
did look at that.
And a local sales tax, retailer's occupation tax or service occupation tax would require a referendum, which could be commonly seen as a local sales tax or a packaged goods tax, so.
And normally, when a village or city incorporates, they create that at that point in
that time.
time, not later.
Yeah, that wouldn't have happened in 2007. So, thank you.
Okay, Trustee McKelvey, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. On both the telecommunication and the video streaming, how did you estimate that? What was the formula you used based on population or just?
Speaking with Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, asking about their mini client base and experience with IDOR to get a number, and I'll let Carmen answer that because he's got a very good source for that one.
Okay.
For telecom, we looked at average number of households, or, well, not average, but number of households in the village. And I think, was it 80 or 90% of, on average, so we didn't take 100% of the households, and it took an average bill and then multiplied it by the percentage. So it's capped at 6% by statute. I've not seen a community that has had a rate lower than that I've worked with, so typically at the max, 6%.
And IDOR did give you a kind of a range that, with those numbers, parameters, the dollars.
And then on food and beverage, you didn't give an estimate on that.
I'm sorry, that one is very hard to do because the number of restaurants in the community are not that great, but they're very disparate too. I mean, the bill at the Scottish place is a lot higher than
Right.
McDonald's, but they don't do the volume McDonald's does. In my experience in other communities, we had 4- and 5-star restaurants, but our McDonald's equaled or surpassed them in the sales tax generation just because 7 days a week, they got
Yeah.
people all 20.
Yeah, it's 3.
So we just kind of took
Trustee Menz.
an estimate on that based a little bit from what I heard from Elburn, and I think we have fewer establishments than they do.
Trustee Muncy, go ahead.
Two questions, please. So what is that estimate? I still haven't heard a number.
Oh, about 35,000.
Okay, great. And then the second question, probably both for Administrator Rooney and Attorney
And
Carmen.
that's at the 2%. Do it
Yeah.
not 1%, but do 2%.
Got it. Okay, thank you. The streaming or amusement tax, the places for eating or food and beverage tax, and the telecommunication tax, these are extremely common in most communities that are around us, not just the Chicagoland area, but all across Illinois. Is that correct?
They're certainly in the 250 communities that are the suburbs of Chicago, they're very common and almost universal. But even nationally, telecommunication tax, streaming taxes, food and beverage are pretty obsequious all across the country, especially in tourist areas. You almost always have it.
And I guess I have a third question, sorry. And how many of those communities in our area also do not have an income tax or a property tax on their residents?
I did not, we are,
We're the only one of the
yeah,
only
Lily
ones.
Lake and Schaumburg does not have a property tax either because of their strong sales tax.
Thanks.
Other communities I work with, besides Schaumburg, Vernon Hills doesn't have a local property tax, but they also have a considerable amount of commercial revenue and sales tax from their malls, their mall.
But they have passed referendums to pay for roads in the absence of their
That is true.
property tax.
They have. Oak Brook doesn't have a local property tax too, but again, the mall.
And we do not levy a property tax, believe it or not. There are some people that really don't pay attention to their tax bill when it comes in, but we do not levy a property tax here. Go ahead, Trustee McKelvey.
Yeah, just one more question. I had asked this, I think, 2 meetings ago, and it's somewhat related. It's not exactly related, but it's somewhat related. That company that goes around and tries to gather money, and I went back and looked in the minutes, the name of the company, I think, is Azavar, if I'm saying it correctly, or?
That's correct.
Yeah. Did we ever look at that and call them and find out kind of where we are on that? Because we did vote as a board to secure, to hire them and to go and do this, and have never heard anything back. So I'm just following up. I asked that a couple meetings ago.
My experience, Azavar is the community or the contractor of choice in the suburbs of Chicago, and they don't get paid unless they find the revenue. They get a percentage of what they find. So they're usually, very aggressive on looking for those sources. But I think the only one I could see that they were looking at was one of the Comcast rights-of-way permits, and we had already started that process, so we didn't let them move in on that. They haven't given us a report. I still don't have a report that's coming. That generally means they didn't find any revenues that we should have received from any of the franchise agreements across the board.
So you did have a conversation with them? then?
Yeah, but they don't have anything for me. They said they'll talk to their representative that has our case and get back to me, and I haven't gotten it yet. It could be they come back with some dollar amount, but I'm not very hopeful, because my experience in other communities, they got back in 2 to 3 months with a laundry list of items that they could pursue and achieve for the village.
Trustee Burson, go ahead.
I wouldn't place any hope on collecting $1 additional from a relationship like that. There's a huge disconnect here. The telecommunications tax was staring them in the face on the first day that you had the conversation with them. They didn't need to do any research. It was there, and so they should have said on day one, you should pass a telecommunications tax because that's bigger than anything else that you have on the table. And that didn't require research. There are not that many rocks to turn over, and I think that between our administrator and our attorney, they've already turned over more rocks than Azavar ever even attempted to turn over. So I don't see any particular value in trying to find additional sources of revenue. Now, when it comes to how you collect the revenue, there will be a discussion in the future about how we want to go about collecting it, and they are also in the business of helping people collect that revenue, right? But the largest source of revenue available to us, it was always there, and they never told us. So I think we have to keep that in mind. And to the question about how these numbers were calculated, there can be discussion and disagreement perhaps about some of the assumptions, but you would be able to provide us with a breakdown, some type of a breakdown for both telecommunication tax and streaming tax that would say, starting with this number of households, X number of dollars per household, extend it out, and show us how that works, right?
Right, and just based on the simple math on the number of households and percentage, it can be provided. But for a places of eating tax and the amusement streaming tax, of course, as the memo indicated, the village is the collector. The individual, the vendors are the remitters. So for places of eating tax, especially in a smaller community, usually it's someone in finance or someone in administration that maintains regular contact with the businesses. When they file their ST1s, that's usually the same schedule that they file with the village, or they remit to the village. There have definitely been instances where, in communities I've worked in, where there have been people who don't, or entities that don't want to pay or get behind. Penalties are written into the ordinance like we have here, and then it's up to staff whether or not they want to pursue them, because a lot of times it's a considerably lower amount. You might have a local deli that owes $75 for that month. Is it really worth it to go after them for the first month? Maybe you give it a couple months. For amusement streaming tax, the key is to set up a relationship, or to set up that line of communication at the outset, right after the ordinance is passed. Staff contacts those vendors or those companies and maintains a line of communication, tells them that they are the collector. They're the ones that have to collect that amount from their customers and then remit it to the village. So the village isn't going out and and collecting each individual household's tax, but they're contacting the various entities, and the ones I listed in the memo are the common ones, but there are many. So that there is some staff work on the outset, but then after everything is set up and the bills start to reflect that fee added to an individual user's bill, then it starts to work for itself.
But talking to other villages, the Disney, ESPN kind of channel, Hulu, they have the dollar amount that they know that they generate in their village, and they just apply the tax and do the remittance. So there's no calculation by staff. And I don't even know, I know I pay one at my house, and I tried to read the bill to see what the fee was, and I couldn't find the fee, but I talked to the city administrator. He said, no, we passed that one. It's on there. I just don't know how to show you on your bill, but it's there somewhere. And I think Tracy could speak to it in East Dundee, they have the same experience.
And the one thing to consider for, specifically related to the telecommunications tax, I'm sorry, for the streaming tax, you know, this wouldn't mean that an individual user in the village, that their fee would increase. You know, you pay a set amount every month to Disney, Netflix, Amazon, whatever it might be. The village's contact would be with that company, more likely not their tax compliance department, and I imagine they communicate with not just municipalities in Illinois, but all over the country. And they know what they need to pay at what rate. We give them a copy of the ordinance, and then they pay it.
Okay, trustee Millette, go.
Thanks for all the research. I mean, I'm okay with anything related to telecom in general, because we inherited the county's Comcast fee, and we fought them over it for years till we got it from them. So, I mean, that wasn't, I don't think that's contrary to our original concept of being a village. We wanted to capture our local revenue so we can use them for local stuff, instead of they going to, you know, Geneva, meaning the county, and coming back. Places of eating's a tricky one. I mean, I'd have to think a little bit longer and hard about that one if I was thinking about it, just because we had one when I was in Clarendon Hills, and it's annoying to collect at times, and it could get some pushback from the restaurants that they, you know, may see it as not a McDonald's, they're not going to notice it. But the sit-down ones might have an issue, so I think we maybe would talk a little bit longer before we went to that level. But certainly anything that we can say is a successor to what was, you know, the Comcast tax, so that would be the streaming services. I think that's perfectly within the pipeline, because at this point, we're now actually trying to capture lost revenue on some of that, because as pointed out with cord cutting and bundling changes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm okay with those. Need to talk a little bit more about the places of eating.
Okay, trustee Morgan.
Yeah, I'm with trustee Millette. I'm sitting here looking at the little pie chart that was handed out. And you can already see that video gaming tax is already $23,607 that's coming back from the restaurants here in town. You go down, you see they're already paying $17,500 for a liquor license. You can also see they're already paying $5,839 for video gaming licensing fees. How much more do we need to put on our restaurants when their costs of goods have risen and their cost of labor has risen? I'm for everything, but what would come up with the eat-in tax at this time?
No, trustee Burson, go ahead.
I understand the concern about the food and beverage tax. When it comes to the telecom and streaming taxes, I think part of the key to us maximizing our revenue is getting clarity on what households are actually in the village of Campton Hills. And if I understand it correctly, that was really at the heart of the battle with the county over the Comcast issue, right? So it feels to me like the work, you know, like the significant work in this is going to be, you know, clearly communicating the households we believe are in the village, and dealing with any pushback that we get on that, and perfecting our case that these are in the village. And
Okay, any more discussion? No, I just want to say something about the food and beverage tax. Every time we leave our own community, we eat somewhere in Kane County or DuPage County, wherever it might be, or going to Galena or wherever it might be. It's a user fee, so you eat at their restaurants. That fee goes to that village, whether it's Geneva or Batavia or Elburn even. So, you know, our thinking is we have great restaurants here, and, you know, keep it coming to our own community. And we can certainly budget the money, you know, and put it to good use for our police department and for roads. So.
Well, then I think we probably should address them one at a time and see if there's a motion to move it to an action item for May 7th on telecommunication. Would there be a motion to move that for action?
Is it, can we do it? Is it on the agenda that way? Yeah.
So moved. I will.
Consensus to move it forward to the action item for telecommunication and streaming, both.
Okay.
And then food and beverage, I think we're gonna have to see, yes, move it forward, or hands? None, so you want?
For discussion,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm fine for discussion, and part of that would be what our neighbor, right? We're gonna ask you, what are our neighbors doing? And if everybody else is doing it, then we're not at a competitive disadvantage, that's a different story. Maybe. Still talk about it.
Yeah,
We'll put both of them on for action.
The,
for next.
All three, and then
I think all three, they can always remove one. Yeah, okay.
for locally collected taxes, typical procedure is that you enact it, wait 30 days until it becomes into effect. That's typically what's done. For the telecom tax, it has to be to IDOR by October 20th, and then, I'm sorry, September 20th. They'll let us know if everything's in order by October 20th, I believe, and then it would be effective January 1st. So what I'd like to do between now and then is send a draft copy of the ordinance to IDOR and have them give us advance comments if they think everything's in order, and if so, then we'll put it on the next agenda.
Yeah,
Could we
trustee
use
Noel.
our Comcast or ComEd address list for them? Something like that, that's what they
We
would need?
probably could. They're just going to care to, if the ordinance matches the provisions of the statute, that
Roger that.
language, so. And they're pretty good about communicating.
And we'll have to make sure they do understand that a lot of our residents have St. Charles zip code or even Elgin zip code.
That's true. Okay, all right, moving along here, and Chief Levan's been waiting. 8B, Police Monthly Report for March.
Sort of long night, so we'll make this
It
real
is
quick
long.
for you. So calls for service, 138, 11 accidents, 6 with injury, 2 arrests, 56 citations. I'll save all the other good stuff for a different meeting unless anyone has questions.
Any questions for Chief Levan? Okay, thank you. All right, 8C, Treasurer's Monthly Report.
All right, I'll be brief since we just talked about the budget. I distributed the 11th month year-to-date results to everybody. I'm going to go to the very last page, 9 of 9. Give you a chance to grab that. So the last page, 9 of 9, I'm going to start at line 267, which is the village-wide net revenue over expenditures. For fiscal year '24 actuals year-to-date, we are over budget, well, not over budget, but we've spent $1.2 million more than we took in. But we budgeted almost $1.5 million for the fiscal year. So we're actually doing well compared to budget. And part of the reason that is if you look at line 264, we only budgeted $1 million in MFT, almost $1.1 million. And we spent, by choice, $1.5 million. We had some projects that we couldn't complete in fiscal year '23, so we moved them into fiscal year '24. And I just want to note, you just passed an ordinance for a budget that is over by $381,000. Last year's budget was over $1.48 million. So relatively speaking, this budget for this year isn't that out of whack. And we have a contingency of the, well, I don't want to go into the budget, you already passed it. So anyways, those are the results, and you have the cash balances for both bank accounts. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Timothy? All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, I'll take a motion to move the village board to go into closed session.
So moved.
Okay, moved by trustee Burson, second.
I'll second it.
Who's second? Yeah, I will, yeah. Seconded by trustee Morgan. It's for appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or contractors, or litigation that is filed and pending or is probable or imminent, and there'll be no action afterwards. Okay?
And still so moved.
Thank you. Roll call?
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee McAlvey? Trustee Millet?
Nay. Okay, aye, fine.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.